അതാണ് സാറേ, ഒന്ന് മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്നാ മതി സാറേ. അപ്പം അതിന്റെ
എപ്പോഴാ വാങ്ങിച്ചത്?
ഏതിനാ
ട്രെയിന്?
സാറേ മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്നാ മതി സാറേ, ഗിരീഷ് സാറേ. അപ്പം ആ ഡിസ്റ്റർബൻസ് വരില്ല അങ്ങോട്ട്.
സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാം സാർ.
ഓക്കെ. യൂട്യൂബ് ഓക്കെ ആണോ മുനീഷിത്തെ?
ഓക്കെ ആണ് സാർ.
So now we can start, sir.
Okay, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. A dream is your creative vision for your life in the future, and the success belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. After the successful completion of the 2 modules, we are here for the 3rd module. Actually, it will be one of the requests from many of the participants after the successful completion of the first webinar about the clinical opportunities in USA. It will be one of the awaited session for many of the professionals and students. So, with much happiness and proud, the very first pharmacy professional organization of Kerala, Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association, is again here with the webinar series on overseas career and research opportunities for pharmacy students after the successful completion of the first 2 modules. With proud, today we are presenting the 3rd module, Exploring Career Trajectories, Academic and Non-Academic Pathways in US. It is my blessing to be a part of the event as the master of ceremony, and myself, Sonu Benny, PhD Research Scholar, Amrita School of Pharmacy, Amrita Vishwavidyapitham, Cochin. With immense pleasure, on behalf of Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association, I would like to invite all of you to this gracious occasion of the 3rd module of the webinar series, Exploring Career Trajectories, Academics and Non-Academic Pathways in US. Hearty welcome, one and all. Let's begin with a silent prayer song to seek blessings from God Almighty. Thank you all. Words are the true expression of heart. It is my privilege to invite an efficient pharma professional, Dr. Dilip G, Executive Member, Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association, and Analyst and Office Head, Drug Testing Laboratory, Medical College, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, one and all. Today's KPGA's 3rd webinar in this session in this series is going to commence within a few minutes. On behalf of KPGA, it is a privilege for me to welcome our Honorable President, Dr. Srikumar sir. I would like to welcome Sadish sir, Dr. Sadish sir, and I would like to welcome all the very senior people of KPGA like Matthew Cockart sir, Girish sir, and now I'll be going to start my role. So today's session is a very good session. It will be very useful for the young budding pharmacy people, professionals. So I am very honored to welcome the chairperson of this event, Mr. Abdul Samad KM sir, the Vice President of KPGA, and my hearty welcome to Advocate Unnikrishna Panikkar sir, Executive Member of our KPGA, who will be giving an introduction of the module. And it is a great privilege for me on behalf of Kerala Pharmacy Graduate Association to welcome the speaker of the day, Dr. Prashant Nedungadi, who will be giving a brief thing about the job opportunities regarding the academic and non-academic pathways in the US. And I would like to welcome Dr. Sandhya, the moderator, who will be handling the session. And I would like to welcome Dr. Nishit, who will be delivering the vote of thanks. And one and all, I'll be welcoming Dr. Nasir, Dr. Sri Nasir sir, who will be the General Secretary of KPGA. And I would like to welcome one and all who will be participating in this occasion. This is a very useful webinar. It will be useful for all the professionals who is working, who will be going to finish their B.Pharm and M.Pharm and all. Over to you, Soni. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. With much respect, let me invite an impulsive and a very enthusiastic pharma professional, Mr. Abdul Samad KM, Vice President KPGA, for the presidential address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Sonia. A very good evening to the one and all. At first, let us welcome all the newly joined members to our family. Remembering our beloved ones who left us recently for their eternal board, let me enter my duty of chairing this session of our webinar series. Today, as the opening message, I would like to emphasize, especially to our student community, the eminence of being a part of KPGA, the pioneer professional organization of pharmacy graduates of Kerala. Since its formation, our forerunners had sought and fought a lot for professional advantages. These efforts are still ongoing. KPGA is the primary gateway to the pharmacy fraternity. Members count matters, and it makes any association more powerful to fight at times of difficulties. So I request our young budding pharmacists to be a part of KPGA once you complete your graduation and lead this association ahead to further heights. Let us move together because together everyone achieve more. Propagate this message among your fellow beings. Also, let me request all speakers of today, with an exemption to the subject speaker, to limit their speeches to 2 minutes each. Thank you. Now over to Sonu to invite Dr. Unnikrishna Panikar for introducing the webinar module.
Thank you so much, sir. The third module of the webinar series on overseas opportunities for the pharma students. To introduce the module with pride, I would like to invite a very enthusiastic and versatile pharma professional, Advocate Unnikrishna Panikar MK, former Director, School of Medical Education, MG University. With utmost respect, I welcome you, sir, for the introduction of modules.
General Secretary Nasir, executive members, participants of this seminar, and dear students who I think are many in this group. Now, let me say that we have already conducted two webinars in the last 1 month or so, and this is the third one in line. And that we have assembled here to participate in this program is to go through the third in the series, which will be focusing on the academic and non-academic professional opportunities in the United States of America. Now, we may ask why we are pondering about the opportunities in US and not in India. Now, the module itself is so designed that we are now in a situation where we have to spread our wings out of India, because at a state when we have only 25 students passing out every year, now we have 2,000. But proportionately, our state doesn't have the capacity to accommodate these students. So it is inevitable that the pharmacy students shall definitely opt for opportunities abroad in Gulf countries, US, Australia, like that. And I just want to say one thing, which our former Indian ambassador to the United States of America, who told our then Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, that Mrs. Gandhi asked him why there is brain drain, so much of brain drain into US, because there are a lot of intelligent persons going to flooding away from India. Then the best answer given by Dr. Abidali was, it is, madam, it is better to drain the brain than to put the brain in the drain. So which means that at that time he was focusing that there are no opportunities in India. Now coming to the pharma sector also, the opportunities of maybe here and there we have only few opportunities in the drug control department, in the teaching profession, in the hospitals and all. So it has become inevitable that such programs has to be introduced. And KP, I'm very proud that the prime organization Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association is taking valiant steps in this direction under the presidentship of Dr. P.K. Shivakumar and other executive members. And I am also very proud to hear that one of our guest speaker, who is an alumni of our College of Pharmaceutical Sciences, and who none other than Dr. Prashant Nedungadi, who will be introduced by the moderator later. And but Nedungadi, being a very common popular name in Kerala, who started a banking business and later it merged with the Punjab National Bank. So I hope that Dr. Prashant Nedungadi will be showering his talk, and I request all the pharmacy students who are participating in this program to tune your ears to what Dr. Prashant has to say to us. And also, on behalf of Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association, may I invite the students to join Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association in order to strengthen our activities further. With these few words, and with due respect to all other participants and Dr. Sandhya, Nishant, Dilip, and all of this, I conclude my module introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. In the very first module, we came to know about how to become a clinical pharmacist in the US. So definitely, today we are here to explore the career trajectories, academics and non-academic pathways in US, one of the most awaited sessions. So we are moving to our webinar session, and we are so blessed to have Dr. Prashant Nedungadi, Director, American Heart Association, Scientific Advisor, and the Adjunct Faculty, University of North Texas, as our speaker of the day. Before moving to the session, I'm kindly reminding all the participants and especially the students to post your queries in the chat box and to utilize the platform to clear all your doubts and to grab your dreams to be a successful pharmacist in US. At this juncture, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. S. Sandhya, a masterful academician and a streamlined researcher, and moreover, an active member of the professional organizations, to moderate the session and to introduce the speaker. With much respect, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sonu. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to our Honorable President, Vice President, Secretary, and other office bearers of Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association for giving me an opportunity to moderate the session. Thank you, sirs. Now, I take this great privilege in introducing our most eminent speaker of today's session, Dr. Prashant Nedungadi. So we'll be delivering a talk on exploring career trajectories, academic and non-academic pathways in the US. Dr. Nedungadi is currently associated as Director, American Heart Association, and is a leading team of guideline experts focused on development and dissemination of HA cardiovascular and stroke guidelines. He works with the Research Network Expert Panel and identify key concepts and translation of science content for professional and consumer audience. Dr. Nedungadi provides consultation, review guidance, and approval of scientific content. He is also served as scientific advisor at National Center, Dallas, Texas, and also worked as postdoctoral research associate, adjunct faculty, assistant professor, and director of Genomic Core, University of North Texas Health Science Center, Texas. He's also been the postdoctoral fellow at Stone Diabetes Center, UT Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas, Texas, and also been a research associate in pharmacology and neuroscience in University of Louisiana at Monterey, Los Angeles. His experience in research is enormous. He's investigated the role of brain ventral lamina terminalis angiotensin in intermittent hypoxia-dependent hypertension, identified the role of neural ion channels in regulating body fluid homeostasis in animal models, identified the role of brain ion transporters in hepatic cirrhosis and congestive heart failure, investigated the link between diabetes, obesity, and cognitive impairment in Mexican Americans. He's received pilot grant in understanding the molecular changes during aging and Alzheimer's. Apart from all these, he's been the reviewer of several research articles and has published articles in very high impact factor journals. Now, Dr. Prashant Nadingari has completed his B.Pharm from Kerala University in the year 2003, PhD in Pharmacology Neuroscience from University of Louisiana in 2009, postdoctoral fellowship from UT Southwestern Medical Center, Texas in 2010, and postdoctoral research associate, University of North Texas in the year 2012. With this brief introduction, I humbly request Dr. Prashant Nadingari to kindly deliver the talk. Sir, please.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Can you hear me all?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll
audible,
try to
audible.
thank you. Let me try to share my screen and let me know if it works well. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Sorry, I just have to go to the first slide. So you should be able to see my first slide right now.
Third.
Perfect. All right.
So I think it's the third one.
Is it the third one? I just thought.
So can you make it full screen, sir?
Right, hold on. I thought I can see it full screen from my end.
But it's not changed here. Yeah. One, I think again you can try. One more
Okay,
time.
hold on.
Okay.
Let me just.
Third, we can go to first slide. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
first one we can.
Yes. Slideshow you can resume. Slideshow you can resume now. Slideshow. Okay.
All right, so you can see my full screen, right? Or is it in the presentation?
Not full
It's the
screen.
First slide.
Okay.
Yeah. First slide.
Click on
Okay.
that. Click on that
Okay, so-
slideshow.
All right, so let me just make it to the full screen. Hopefully you'll be able to. Okay, I tried it doing the full screen from here, but so if you can't, just let me know. But you can see the slides now, right?
Yes, very clear. Very clear.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
All right, perfect. All right, so thank you again so much for the kind introduction. First of all, thank you, KPGA, and especially Mr. Nishit for the invitation and the opportunity to share my experience, and more important, to be helping out students who are really looking forward for this advanced education and career opportunities after their higher education in the United States. This webinar series from KPGA to me seems to exemplify the commitment that this association has to the upcoming pharmacy professionals in the future. So thank you again for inviting me to be able to share my experience and perspective on the different career trajectories after higher education in the US. So I just went to the next slide. Let me know if you can't see it. Before I, really delve into the different career paradigms in the US for the pharmacy students who are interested in higher education, I just briefly wanted to run through my personal career trajectory, and I hope that in some ways this would help the pharmacy students in charting out their career plan, and also hope to inspire the next generation of pharmacy leaders that we have in this Zoom room today, as well as those watching in YouTube. So rather than speak from a perspective from where I'm at right now, I just would like to go back to 1999. When I joined BPharm at the College of Pharmaceutical Science in Trivandrum. And the reason I bring this up, I think it's very important to start planning very early, so that you can be best prepared for what's coming for your future. And this was certainly much more important back then, because I didn't have, or back then the kind of opportunities that we had wasn't as much as as that's available right now. So I think it was in my second year of BPharm that I really identified my career plan. I know it's pretty early for a lot of folks, but I was right during my second year of BPharm that I really wanted to come to the US for higher education. And I graduated from BPharm in 2003 and reached US in January of 2005 with a full scholarship for pursuing my PhD in pharmacology, with specializing in neuroscience. And by the time I graduated in 2009, I had authored 9 peer review first author publications as part of my PhD defense. And following this, I went into my first postdoctoral training at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, and then followed up with another postdoc at the University of Texas. I then moved into a faculty position after my second postdoc at the same university, and then served as the director of the genomics core at their center. And during the stint of my academic life, I had around over 20 first author publications, all international journals, and was invited for at least 50 international conferences, and been part of several review boards that I still am part of, and also journal editorial boards. And it was during this time that I got an invitation from the American Heart Association to join their team as the scientific advisor. And it was a career-changing move for me, because I was involved mostly in the academic side of research. So moving from the bench side to the non-academic side, or the nonprofit side of the American Heart Association, was a big career change for me. But I think at that point I was really brave enough to really kind of go into that career shift, and which is when I decided that I'll accept the position and joined as the scientific advisor for the American Heart Association. And since then, I've moved over to the director of American Heart Association, primarily working on the guideline development. So, if you look at the stroke guidelines and the cardiovascular guidelines, so those are some sides of the work that I do at the AHA. In addition to being a scientific lead at the American Heart Association. So the next slide, I hope I'm having some trouble moving the slides. Let me know if you can.
Yeah, and now it's third, I think.
Okay, is it the third slide which shows the applying for higher
Yeah,
education in the US? Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to. So, so applying for the US, higher education is a task. It does require a lot of time and concentration, as each of the application is going to be different and it involves several steps. So, I thought I'll put this out there for folks who are actually considering higher education in the US, because there are several things that you'll have to consider and work on before you make into the US for higher education. The first thing that obviously you would have to do is to get your test scores, which is the TOEFL and the GRE. So these are both standardized tests. And the TOEFL, as many of you might know, is a standardized test to measure your English language ability for, especially for the non-native speakers like, us, who are wishing to enroll in the English-speaking universities. The second test that most of you would have to take who are interested in coming to the US for higher education would be the GRE test. And what this basically measures is your verbal reasoning, your quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and your analytical writing skills. So, these are skills that are not particularly related to one specific field of study, but they are important for all. So, so these are some of the initial tests that you'll have to take. The other things that you'll need help for preparing your application is the transcripts that you receive from the university that shows you what your total grade or scores are from your pharmacy degree. You would also need to get or write a statement of purpose, which is basically a personal essay saying the reason why you are so interested in the specific field of study that you are applying for. You'll also need several letters of recommendation, and this would be from your professors, from folks who you know really well, and can write to your potential as a candidate to apply for higher education in the US. And then finally, you'll need any other supporting documents that you might be used for supporting your application. So for example, if you have been working as doing an internship at some place, that work experience could really add on to your application process. So with all that, you include your application form and the necessary fees, and then apply to the university. And most of the US universities, they have 2 admission intakes every year. For all classes and courses. So usually the fall semester starts by around like August to September, and then you'll have another spring admission that's usually starts during January and ends in May. So make sure when you're applying to apply early, and so you are not late for the admission process for the semester that you're planning to apply for. Okay, so this slide just kind of shows you what the several advantages that you have of doing your higher education in the US, and I just put it into a few buckets here. So the first one is the accessibility. Now, the good thing with doing a higher education in the US, especially if you're coming in for doing a PhD program, is that you don't really have to focus immediately on the dissertation proposal. I know that's the case in several countries in the world where on day one, where you actually join in for the PhD program, you are supposed to at least get to be involved in a particular work that you're interested in. So here you have the opportunity to kind of rotate between labs and get to know what you really want to do for your PhD dissertation proposal. And this is part of the reason also that, the PhD programs in US are sometimes a bit longer than what you see in other parts of the world. The second thing I just wanted to bring up was the fact that the US has some of the world's leading universities and research that happens. And part of it is the substantial investment in research and the expertise that's available in research in the United States. The international community, that's a very diverse academic community. If you plan to come to the US, any universities you'll go, you'll pretty much see a very diverse community, which is very welcoming. And that's, I think that would be a big advantage of anyone planning to do PhD in the United States. Innovation, the innovative ideas that you can pursue during your education, whether it be bringing in new research ideas and also the opportunity for this collaborative work with others in the same field. I think that's a big plus as you think about your interest into the PhD program. The US also has a very structured approach to the doctoral training. And finally, I would say the breadth of opportunity that you can have in this country. There are a wide variety of opportunities that are available after your higher education. I'll go into more of those opportunities later as I discuss. But these are some of the key reasons of interest for folks who are interested in coming to the US for their higher education. Now, I would put the career types that you can have after your PhD into, again, these four major classes. One would be the research and the teaching, which is predominantly the case for a lot of post-PhD individuals. So what this entails is obviously, conducting research or directing a program of research. It could also involve teaching at a higher institution, just exclusive teaching, or it could include a combination of both research and teaching. The second aspect would be the science-related non-teaching side of it, where you would not be conducting research, but you would be involved in a science-related job area. And then some of the PhDs then either opt for a subsequent postdoc, which is the case mostly. They do a postdoc, one or two postdocs, or they could have some additional kind of further studies going on. Lastly, there are a lot of opportunities where PhDs go into a position which might be unrelated to science research or education. So kind of moving away from that bench research, if you will, in many cases. The next slide just shows around the career categories that can be pooled into the opportunities that you would have after your education. So, the PhD level scientists are commonly hired in the area of academics, which include, universities, colleges, and research institutions. They are also hired in for-profit companies, so like in industries, right? So in addition to this, big pool of academic and industry opportunities that PhD have, there's also a lot of opportunities in government and nonprofit organizations. So, PhDs are mostly hired in addition to research in these government or nonprofit ventures, and they're mainly hired for things like science policy, government relationships, communications, education, publications, executive positions. And in many of these areas, the PhD level scientists are needed to translate the scientific content, the scientific topics into content that could be well understood by the lay audience. such as the public or students or, even the politicians, if it involves some kind of a lobbying at the federal level. Now, in the executive positions, the PhD level scientists serve members through their leadership, where it might be really important to have those kind of oral and communication, written communication skills, as well as your scientific expertise to talk with funders, right? Which would be a key aspect of the survival of that organization, or, kind of forging those bonds. Now, many societies also kind of manage their own scientific journals, and this is where the PhD level scientists are, could be hired as editors for the journals and so on. So, the first obvious choice for a lot of post PhD students would be, entering into the academia. Now, that usually starts with getting some sort of postdoctoral training. And the first objective, or the primary objective or thought that goes through a postdoctoral fellow's mind is, kind of attaining that faculty position in an academic setting. And that's the most cited, primary career goal for these postdoctoral trainees. But in addition to that, the postdoctoral training, what then happens is, you could go into the different levels of research professorship, right? So you have, as in cases around the world, you have these gradations from the assistant professor all the way through the full professor, endowed chair, so on and so forth. You could also go into a much a different, not a different entirely, but rather than a postdoctoral training, you could, be involved in some kind of a research associate professor, research associate position within the labs, or work as staff scientist. That also depends on how the nomenclature of how different organizations call their staffs. And if you're more interested in just going into teaching, there are definitely instructor level positions open for PhD level candidates. And in most cases, if you look at universities across the US, there is some amount of teaching that has to be done along with your research. So once you move from that postdoctoral phase into the academic assistant professor or so on level, there is some amount of teaching that you might have to do, because part of your funding would come from that teaching position as well as from your research grant. And I think it's important because, giving that opportunity of teaching and then providing it, providing your expertise to the upcoming students and the graduate students are really important. I mean, it is always important to kind of deliver your experience and teaching thoughts to your students. So a lot of these research positions would also involve some amount of teaching, but there are positions that are primarily funded by the teaching grant. So there are positions where there would be more predominantly teaching than your research. Now, going into the second side of it, which would be more of the administration side, the academic and the research administration. This mostly provides the operational management and support to the research and the academic community. So this, basically, if you think of it, it just bridges a link between some of the research activities and the research outcomes that you find, ensuring that you use the best practices for your research. And some of these are listed here below. So it's not an exhaustive list of all the positions that you find. Just in the interest of just having some of those listed out, you would see these listed below. For example, being an administrator of an internal review board, the IRB board, being involved as a grants officer, grants program officer, and also, for example, being part of the institutional animal care and use committee, administrator. So these are some of the opportunities that you could also, that you also have. Now, the second most, or probably the most interested side that a lot of PhDs would want to go is into the industry. There are several positions that you could actually have within an industry. And, these positions, industry-based positions, could range from the bench side research scientist to non-bench side positions. For example, the medical affairs, the medical science liaison, scientific marketing. So these are some of the non-bench based positions that you find in the industry. And, many PhDs work as scientists, in the discovery phase, could be in the preclinical phase, in the clinical research and manufacturing, quality control. So there's a lot of opportunities within the industry itself for a PhD, a trained professional to go into. And, I talked about these non-bench based positions. I think, that's very important, because that's something that a lot of, there's either a misunderstanding or there's not a lot of awareness around these kind of positions within the industry. So when you look at, for example, the medical science liaison position, those could be found in a variety of, healthcare based sectors, medical device sectors, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals. So there's a lot of opportunities for these medical science liaisons within the industry. And the biggest misconception, I would say, of regarding this position, for example, is that it's a sales position. That's absolutely not true. What I call them as medical information scientists is to provide that scientific education to physicians, to educate the pharmaceutical sales force, and to work also with the clinical development team on, for example, on the study protocol, on the design, on the submission, implementation. So this is, these are, the medical affairs and the medical science liaison are again, a very critical part of the industry. And in addition to, some of the industry roles that I listed in here, the PhDs can also, transfer into career paths outside of academia and industry, including the ones that I've kind of, listed below. So you could have a similar role like what you have in the industry or the academic, where you are a scientist. For example, where you work with the Center for Disease Control, CDC, or the Food and Drug Administration. You could work as a scientist in the government sector, similar to the the scientist roles that you have at the academics or the industry. But in addition to these, you could also be involved with, say, working as a program director. You could be involved as a grants manager. So if it's a funding organization, which the government organization, for example, the National Institute of Health, NIH, they have a grants manager. If you look at a nonprofit organization, so we have here, for the American Heart Association, we have grants managers here. We have scientific review officers. So the role, for example, of the scientific review officers would be kind of to work in collaboration with the scientific community to ensure that when these grants come in for review, they identify the right study section groups or the folks, and then identify the most meritorious science that should be funded by the institutes and the centers. And in addition to this, there is also opportunities for PhD trained scientists to be involved in science education. So, the concept of, having that lifelong learning. So it's not just, having a particular just a one or two kind of educative webinar series, but more of a lifelong learning where these there's much more kind of involvement between the different parties into that education process. That's one of the roles that the PhD trained scientists could be working on. You could also be involved in the policy as a policy analyst, or in fact, be involved in advocacy efforts within the US. So there are a lot of lobbying groups within the different organizations that would love to take your idea or take the consorted kind of an idea and then bring it up within the federal government. For example, recent example is when the e-cigarettes is gaining so much popularity within the US. So kind of lobbying against the use of e-cigarettes is part of the role of these government and the nonprofit organizations. Another example would be taxation. So, for example, advocating for taxation of sugary drinks. So you have a Coke, you have these soft drinks that has a lot of added sugar in it. So kind of lobbying against or use of these, either use of these added sugar or even lobbying for elevated tax for these, so that less number of people might be interested in buying these. So these are all kind of roles that you could find within the government or the nonprofit sector. Another piece of opportunity, I would say, would be within the space of science writing and communication. So in the science writing and communication category, I would give you an example here of the medical communication specialist. And as a medical communication specialist, your responsibilities would be mostly involved with writing and editing materials that healthcare organizations can use to communicate that to their to the patients, to the clients, or to the medical professionals. So it usually involves kind of being able to organize, edit, and present these information in a manner that's appropriately targeted for the audience. So if it's, for example, if it's going to be targeted to the lay audience, the way that it's scripted should be targeted for the lay audience. And if it's for the medical professionals, it has to be written in a way that it is able to be clearly understood and scientifically accurate for the medical community. And these positions also usually entails possessing those obviously the excellent writing and communication skills, and also a strong understanding, I would say, of the ethics and the regulatory guidelines in the field. And the main reason for this is that the medical communication specialists are they often work with a variety of documents, which include the patient education brochures. It could include the web content, physician articles, sometimes even sales training materials, and then other regulatory documents. So I think this is an interesting a field if you have that kind of transferable skills, I would say, when you're doing your education. If writing, communication is your strength, this would be one area to think about. Another option is in the regulatory affairs, that basically builds the foundational knowledge on laws, regulations, and good manufacturing process that's mandated by the Food and Drug Administration, and its and also its international counterparts. And these professionals have a very critical role in the pharmaceutical industry, especially, where they have to ensure that the company's product is compliant with the global standards. And they also help in expediting the drug development process by analyzing the current market standards, I would say. And this is something that I didn't know, but as I was checking through a bit more on this, I found that the Temple University School of Pharmacy in Philadelphia, I saw that they offer a graduate program that leads to a PhD in pharmaceutical science with a concentration in regulatory affairs and quality assurance. And that was something that I did not know when I started, not that I was interested in that particular field, but these are kind of, some of the evolving kind of the educational paradigms, if you will, on, if you're more interested in specializing in certain, I mean, there are a lot of programs that are coming up that would help you go into the field that you are planning to. So, this program I thought was quite interesting, that they have this concentration of regulatory affairs and quality assurance that would be a good fit if you are planning or interested in going into the regulatory affairs kind of work. And then, if you are interested in the clinical trial arena, options would include, for example, being part of the clinical trial manager. So as a clinical trial manager, you would be managing the clinical trial process completely. So formulating effective strategies to be implemented at the different stages of development. And I think your PhD would, or your higher education would come to use here, because you could basically interpret, you could understand, and then discuss these results, these information that you have received during the trial, and then use them to document and then further understand the direction that this trial is going. So a lot of opportunities in the healthcare and the clinical science, and some of it obviously it kind of laces with the industry positions. If you are a clinical trial manager or a translational research manager, example. The last one that I just wanted to bring up, and I think it's also a very important and an interesting field for those who are kind of more interested in the business development and strategic alliance. This would be an opportunity that could be pursued after your higher education. So we all know, I mean, despite the heavy investments that the industries have, or the nonprofits have, and the growth chart that you see for all these companies, there are several challenges that these companies or these organizations face that could shake up the mission of the industry or the organization. And what this could lead to is having a poor R&D productivity, the changing landscape, difficult market conditions. I mean, these are some things that are challenges for these companies to that they really need to tackle. And so what role can you have as a that you can play in these companies as being part of the business development or being involved with the strategic alliance? So strategic alliance is basically, if you think about it, it's just a cooperation between few entities. Could be companies, could be few nonprofits. But having this kind of alliance, what it does is it really improves so for companies, it would improve their their R&D, making them more competitive in the market. And for nonprofits, so for example, for the American Heart Association, what I kind of partly involved with is to try to find collaborations, or even with other organizations, try to collaborate with us so that they can stay in the space of guidelines, right? So rather than have a multitude of guidelines being produced by each of these organizations, the objective here to have a consolidated guideline produced by a number of organizations, which each of these organizations either endorse or affirm. And then having that strategic alliance is important because it keeps the company and the organizations alive. And the landscape is always changing, so you have to have a good understanding of the landscape of how companies are changing, how organizations are changing, and then keep these development business development plans and the strategic alliances in mind as you talk through this. And one last thing I just wanted to share is I just wanted to include this last slide to provide two thoughts, which I think is very important if you plan to make a career move. The first one is on making decisions. And life decisions, as we all know, are tough. Life decisions are very tough. But the good thing is you have the power to make those decisions. Either you can make that decision, or someone else is going to make it for you. So either way, I mean, a decision is going to be made. It's just, up to you to decide whether you want to make the decision, whether it being, coming to the US for higher education, or, pursuing something else. But, I think the power of that decision should be up to you. And the second one, I thought, for all the Harry Potter fans out there who know, J.K. Rowling, she, the struggles that she has gone through before she even came to be known as the author of the Harry Potter series. So, it is very interesting when she says it's impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. And this is very interesting because, what this shows is rather than procrastinate in fear, of making the wrong decision, weigh your options. Always you have to weigh your options, and choose the best one at that time. And revel in the chance to create the life that you want to live. Once you have made that plan, go for it. And I hope this talk has provided some seeds of interest and perspective. And with those closing thoughts, I am happy to take any questions that could be addressed for the next several minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant, for this wonderful, outstanding talk you have delivered. You have very clearly conveyed the scope of the pharmacy graduates in the US. And the closing thoughts which you give a piece of advice to all our participants would be really a good eye opener for all our participants. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and the kind advice you have given to us. Now the session is open for discussion. I request all the participants to kindly post the questions in the chat box. And while mentioning the questions, please introduce yourself, whether you are a student or a faculty. It will be easy for us to convey the answers to you all. Thank you. But I think we have a few questions over here. Can I read the questions one by one to you, sir?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So we have a question, but it's not mentioned. The name of the candidate participant is not mentioned over here. It's asked, she or he, I'm not very sure, it's been asked how to select a topic for PhD and how to know if it's already done by another one.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, how to select a topic for PhD and how to know if it is already done by another person or not.
Right, good question. And I think probably it's coming from a student who might be interested in coming for, doing a PhD. So the first thing I would suggest is, what is your interest in? So it can't be a specific interest. So, a general broader interest. So for my case, when I finished my B pharmacy and then came over, I wanted to do a PhD in pharmacology. That was my interest in at that point in time. So the first is identifying what kind of scope of work you want to, a broader scope of work. So do you want to be going into the pharmaceutical, pharmaceutics field? Do you want to be more involved with drug development? Are you more involved in doing, kind of animal research? I mean, so these are all kind of broader questions that you have to kind of think about. And once you have identified it, go ahead and apply for that program. It also takes a lot of churning through and looking through the web pages of the different universities within the US. So you have to find a program that you think might be important to your goals. But the other thing, especially I would point out is try to look for places that would provide you with some sort of financial assistance. So I think, that's part of all our concerns as well. In addition to having that interest to a particular topic, you would also want to see, how well are you going to be funded for working in that position? And then, as I mentioned earlier, once you get into that program, you have the opportunity to kind of rotate between the labs within that university. And then if you find a lab that is particularly interesting for you, there is that opportunity to, kind of go into that field of work. And obviously, there are going to be your competing, labs that work on similar projects. But that's, once you are in that space, what's going on, what's been published, you will have a better idea of where your research should be taking you.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, good evening. This is from Nania. I think she's a student. Good evening, sir. Could you suggest master programs for PharmD graduates in US?
For PharmD graduates, well, I could suggest, I could talk a bit more on the master's program. And the reason I didn't bring that up is, some of it is overlapping with the opportunities that you would find with the PhD program. A couple of things, though, to keep in mind if you are only planning to come in for a master's as opposed to doing a PhD is, one, it's going to be a shorter program, right? So it's probably going to be a 2 to 3 year maximum program. And unless you are planning to go into research, it is okay to get a master's. And you would have similar opportunities, just as I detailed, other than, being a postdoc, which obviously requires a PhD, and then, probably transitioning into more of that professor level. But for example, going into the business development side of things, going as a, in some cases, going as a medical science liaison, masters, could be okay. But a lot of these positions that I described, though, has a strong emphasis on that kind of that next level of higher education. If you are, planning for those steps. But there are several universities within the US who have the master's program available. There are several, specialities, just similar to what you have for the PhD program. But one thing I would caution, though, if you are planning further for a PhD, I would say just go directly for a PhD rather than take a master's and then go for a PhD.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Prashant. Wish to know the fellowship amount for a postdoc in US labs and expenses.
Well, so that varies again. When so postdoctoral fellowships aren't, that's been a lot of debate within the US and a lot of concern within the US that, postdoctoral fellows do not get a healthy, living salary, I would say. And part of it is because, it is considered a training. It's not considered per se a fixed position. It's more of a transition training that happens between your PhD to your academic, or your industry career. So the NIH scale, which is the scale set by the National Institute of Health, several years back when I was probably doing my PhD was around $40,000 a year, which was, not a whole lot of money, to be honest. But again, it is the idea shouldn't be to, go for postdoctoral training for several years. I mean, the max you should try to do is, save for 3 to 4 years, and then try to transition to whatever you're trying to transition to. But I think that postdoctoral training is very critical to help you, one, understand what you really want to do further, and then also, getting that transferable skills, using that transferable skills to move into, the position that you would want to.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Sonu Benny. How to apply for postdoctoral fellowship options, and should we apply for separate fellowship option for the same? Can you please comment a little on how to apply for the PDF options? What all criteria we need to be satisfied, like articles and all?
Right. So again, I mean, for postdoctoral option, you don't really have to apply for a fellowship because you are, being paid for the job you're doing, right? So, you're not essentially looking for a fellowship. Rather, you're going to be paid by the investigator, the chief investigator who you are going to work with. So a couple of things that you would want to look for, again, is the branch of the area that you really want to go into. Talk to your, I would say, talk to the person that is interviewing you, get to know more about that lab. If possible, try to talk to the other lab folks that he has in his lab, so that you get an idea of, how the research is, how things are going on. So talk to folks, and then obviously, I mean, see the publication history from that lab. If you are really interested in, kind of getting in the publication, world, see how well this lab is publishing. And then the other main aspect is to also try to find out the funding for this lab. How are they funded? Are they funded by an R01 grant, which is, kind of a major NIH grant, or are they just, on some sort of intramural funding? What kind of funding are they getting? How long is this position viable? So try to get to understand, the funding status of that lab, the publication history, talking to the the different individuals within that lab to get a better idea.
Thank you. Now, next question is from Saukamnika. She's asked, how can an MPharm postgraduate or PhD holder from an Indian university enter a clinical trial job in US? And one more thing which she has asked is, what is the procedure? Should we do any other additional courses, programs in US for that?
Okay, so she wants to just understand the question better. So she's trying to get into wanting to know how an MPharm graduate could get into the clinical trial area.
Yes. MPharm postgraduate or a PhD holder from Indian university can enter the clinical trial jobs in the US.
Yeah, so for the clinical, for the side of it, you would need some kind of experience, right? So one thing I would say is, come to the US as, either applying for a PhD or, if you're a PhD graduate, apply for a postdoc. And then, during your, that's what I did. I started my PhD as a in vivo researcher, I would say, as a bench scientist. But then, I wanted to expand that bench science to a more clinical science, going into that clinical space. So what I did was, you could look for these collaborative opportunities that you could find with clinical investigators. So this, for example, kind of, helping them with, some of the blood sampling, kind of, try to get into that clinical space arena. And then once you have that, once you have some kind of clinical trial experience or the clinical experience, it's a much more easier path to moving into the the pharma world if you want to be a kind of a clinical trial space. But you would obviously need some kind of experience before jumping into that clinical space. So I would suggest having some collaborative efforts with individuals who are in that space, and then use that as a reference to move into the clinical arena.
Thank you. The next question is from Aisha. She's asked, what is a qualification to enter regulatory affairs? What is a qualification to enter regulatory affairs?
Yeah, so I don't know specifically what kind of regulatory affairs you are looking at, but I would think you could have, again, as I said earlier, there are universities that provide kind of higher education in the regulatory affairs space. So having those kind of at least a coursework, so if it's not entirely dedicated to regulatory affairs, having some kind of coursework that you take that involves regulatory affairs, that should work as a starting point for you to get into the regulatory affairs space. But generally, I mean, over here you would have PhD individuals who are in that in the regulatory affairs, and then again, a lot of jobs, I would say, just re-emphasizing, a lot of jobs in the US, it's getting those transferable skills. So don't think of you once being a researcher, you're always a researcher. That is absolutely not going to be the case. It's trying to get those transferable skills. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, if you are a good communicator, you don't really have to be in the research. If you really are interested in that communication space, go ahead, try to move into that science communication field. If you have good writing skills, go and try moving into that, that field. If you are a good deal breaker, if you are a very good people person, try going into that role where you can manage people. So these are all transferable skills that any position would need. And I think having that higher education is critical, because you, in addition to having that scientific expertise that you have, you can also bring those transferable skills and then move within the organization or within the different industries, and find a place that best suits you. But all you have to do is to get some kind of experience for regulatory affairs, and so getting some kind of experience and then moving in that direction.
Thank you so much. Next is from Nicey Johnson. Sir, what is the criteria for higher studies in case of BPharm graduates in the US?
Those are the options. So as discussed in today's discussion, so you could, after your BPharm, you'll have to, again, take those tests, have that application and everything, and then apply for either a master's or a PhD program within the US. So those are the kind of a broader option. So if you're just looking at after bachelor's and not having the higher education and then coming directly for a job, that might be a bit more challenging, because as you all know, I mean, we have every country now has a lot of bachelor students, right? I mean, who are passing out. So it is going to be a competitive space, and you might find come and find a job, but obviously you'll have to think about who you are competing against. You might be competing against the master's graduate students, or you might be competing against the PhD graduate students. So there, I would highly encourage higher education within the US, some kind of higher education. So whether it be a master's 2-year program, whether it be an extended PhD program, but some kind of higher education within the US, but because that's definitely going to add up to your resume for a longer career. And you could do that along the way too. So if you have for example, companies within India where you're employed with, and who have some kind of relationship within the US, you could have come on to the US as as part of a project, and then pave your way through looking for opportunities within other companies within the US. And then in the meantime also try to get additional education within the US, whether it be a business administration if you're interested in going in that direction, or just having some kind of online diploma, and then going in that field. So I think some kind of additional education is always important, as if you want to further your career.
Thank you. And the next is from Dr. Satish Kumar, sir. Sir has asked, if one boy is financially at lower strata, can you advise what are the alternative ways to make a plan for make a plan to make for USA for higher studies? And there is one more question followed by that. What
Now the options for full scholarships.
yes.
So good question. So, I would say, you have to go into, most of the, so if you're coming in for a PhD program, most of the universities at some point is going to give you a full scholarship because, the amount of work that you are investing in that particular research is going to be, fundable. So, it might be in some cases that you might not be funded for the first semester, but then once you get in, you look at the labs, look at the grants that these professors have, and then apply for those labs who can provide that financial scholarship. But most of the PhD programs that you would be entering, they would be providing some kind of financial assistantship. And I would also encourage that, by law, it is required in the US that each of the universities within the US have a financial aid calculator listed on their website. So if you are interested in any program, go on the website. They should have what their financial plan is, and a financial aid calculator that will help you identify how much of expense is going to be there. But mostly for PhD students, it is going to be funded by the lab or by the university.
Bank helps you to go there. Local banks will help you to financially. Suppose he is very, very financially poor. Does the local bank help you to have some fund to go to USA and also? What am I question? You need some money. You need some lakhs of rupees. No? Basically, you need some money from India to be in USA, isn't it? Lakhs of rupees.
Right. So,
that's my question.
So,
yeah.
So, right. So you'll have to show some kind of documentation that you're able to support. But again, if you do know that you are being fully funded by your institution where you're applying to, the amount of fund that you have to show would be very minimal, right? So all you would have to probably show is maybe some living expense at most. But, the biggest criteria that I think at least, 2 decades back when I came to this country was if you were fully funded by the institution, when you go in for the visa interview, all you are being asked is very minimal, basically. I mean, all they're looking at is how well are you being funded? Are you able to be, support yourself when you're going to that country? And what is your kind of your plan, program that you're going in for. So I think once you have that information, there is minimal amount of funding that or money that you'll have to show to the embassy officials.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now, next question is from Avani Krishna Panikar, sir. Sir has asked, can a graduate directly join a PG combined with a PhD?
Can a graduate directly join
PG combined with PhD?
Well, you could do that, but the question, I would not encourage, honestly, going in for a master's PhD program. The only reason is you can directly, so if your intent is to go in and do a PhD, you can directly go in for a PhD. I mean, they're not really looking for a master's candidate to go in for a PhD program. So like, I did my BPharm, I came directly here for a PhD. I didn't even apply for a master's. So they are not essentially looking for a master's candidate to be applying for a PhD. So I think the easy way out would be, if you're interested in the PhD program, would be go directly for the PhD rather than take a master's, because that would just add on the number of years, right? So you'll have 2 years of master's, wherein most probability you are going to pay out from your pocket. It is probably not going to be funded unless you find a good lab where, you can do some kind of part-time work. But if you are directly going to a PhD, I mean, you could take any year, anywhere from 4 to 7 years for your PhD to complete. But in most cases, these positions are going to be funded, and it doesn't make a difference after your PhD whether you have a master's or not.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Suhail. He's asked, can MPharm postgraduate get a job in teaching, or is PhD compulsory?
Within the US, so if you have a master's degree from India and you want to do teaching in the US, I have rarely seen cases where you have a non-US degree person being able to teach in an academic setting within the US, especially within the pharmacy field. So you'll have to have some sort of US degree. So whether it be a master's in the US, you still have opportunities to teach, but you would need a terminal degree within the US to teach at some institution here.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Sudhya. He's asked, what are the additional qualifications necessary for pharmacovigilance job?
Additional qualifications. So I'm not really sure what what kind of level of education. I mean, is it so if it's after post PhD, trying to get into that pharmacovigilance space again, I think it would be doing some kind of maybe a postdoc, a quick postdoc, and try to kind of align some of the postdoctoral experience with the pharmacovigilance field, because it might be difficult just because having a PhD and then coming to the US and then getting into the pharmacovigilance might be a bit trickier. So again, I would encourage to have some kind of bridging training. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certificate course, doesn't necessarily have to be a full-fledged pharmacovigilance degree, but some kind of a bridging training in some ways that can lead to that position.
Thank you, sir. Now next is from Jayalakshmi. She's asked, how a person with MPharm get a PhD admission in US with scholarship?
What are the chances? Sorry.
How can an MPharm graduate get a PhD admission in US with scholarship, along with the scholarship? Yeah.
Right. So again, that goes back to the whole conversation today, right? So, you'll have to kind of identify what so if you're MPharm, I'm just, making this up, if your MPharm is in pharmacology and if you're interested in doing PhD in pharmacology, first thing is to identify, right? I mean, what institution do you want to go for? I mean, there are several institutions within the US. I mean, it's sometimes just hard to find out. So which is why, I would recommend there's a website called the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy or something, so AACP, and that provides a list of all the colleges within the US where you have these different programs. And I would really encourage folks who are interested to kind of take a look at it and see the different colleges and the universities that have that opening. But again, the idea would be to have all these. I mean, you still have to go through all the tests. You'll still have to have your transcripts, your recommendation letters, your supporting documents, and everything along with the application. You have to apply to to your university of interest, to the program that you're interested in. But before you do any of those applications, one thing I would like to mention is, again, kind of connecting directly with the person you're interested in working, or at least, each of the university has an international office. So try connecting, with the international office, send them an email, try to call them if possible, connect with the international office, ask them what are the, what all labs, just, ask them for a contact. So, you could talk to that, particular person. But it's a similar process that you have after your B pharmacy. It's the same application process. It's the same process of finding the right, university. It's the same process of the scholarship. So finding the right funder, finding the right work you want to be involved with. So it's pretty much going to be the same process as you would if you had a B Farm.
Dr. Sandhya, it would be better to close now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Actually, there are no more questions, and many of our participants.
People have started leaving, and it is better not to excuse the speaker too much.
Yes, actually,
you can give his contact so that people can, if he is willing, so that people can contact him.
And no, absolutely. I think I definitely can share my my email and information, and happy to answer any questions offline. If anyone has any kind of additional kind of follow-up questions or things that they were just shy to ask during the session, I really encourage. I'll try to help as much as I can.
You are now exhausted, and you didn't take even a glass of water.
Well,
okay.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you for the consideration.
It would be better to close now. Okay.
Yes, there are a lot of appreciations from many of our participants, and everybody have appreciated your presentation. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
For the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's time for vote of thanks. Where is Sonu?
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Once again, I would like to thank Prashant sir as well as Sandhya madam for the very knowledgeable talk as well as for the wonderful moderation of the session. Thank you so much, sir. And now we are here at the official ending of the session. Before moving to the words of gratitude, on behalf of KPGA, I would like to invite all of you to the upcoming module on 6th of March 2022 on the topic Opportunities in Global Clinical Research for Pharmacy Graduates by Mr. Binish, Senior Director and Head Clinical Data Management Analysis, Cambridge, USA. And as we know, gratitude is the language of heart. I'm delighted to invite our dynamic General Secretary of Kerala Pharmacy Graduates Association, Mr. Abdul Nasir, Production in Charge, Kriti Private Limited, Chalakudi, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sonu. Good evening to one and all. Respected chairman of today's program, invited speaker, Dr. Prashant Nadangadi, dignitaries, KPG members of other pharmacy associations, dear students, and other participants. Today, I am here as a substitute to Dr. Nishit, who is supposed to propose vote of thanks as he is having some personal inconvenience. I would like to take up this responsibility. It gives me immense pleasure and honor to propose vote of thanks to today's function. Firstly, I extend my thanks to the chairman of today's program, Mr. Abdul Samad sir, Vice President of KPGA. Next is today's invited speaker, Dr. Prashant Nadangadi, a Director and Scientific Advisor, American Heart Association and Adjunct Faculty, University of Texas. Actually, we have witnessed a very excellent and informative session by Dr. Prashant on the session exploring career trajectories, academic and non-academic pathway in United States of America. Thank you very much, Dr. Prashant, and I extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to Dr. Prashant for his excellent presentation and to accept our invitation to be the guest of, to the invited speaker of today's program. Thank you. Next, I extend my thanks to Mr. Dilip, who welcomed this program. Then I extend my thanks to Advocate Unikrishna Panikar sir, who has given the introduction of today's program. I extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to Dr. Sandhya, who is the moderator of today's program. Now we have our leaders and organizers of program here. Dr. Srikumar sir, President of KPGA, Dr. Sadish Kumar sir, former President of KPGA and Editor of Farmline, Mr. Matthew Kokkat sir, Executive Member KPGA Dr. Kala Madam, Vice President KPGA Mr. Sunil Kumar, Treasurer KPGA Dr. Nishit, Mrs. Sangeeta, and all other executive members of KPGA. I extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to all of you. I take this opportunity to thank Kumari Sonu Benny, the master of ceremony of today's program. I extend my thanks and gratitude to Sony, our regular anchor of the program. I can see many faculties and senior members in our program. I extend my wholehearted thanks and gratitude to all the faculty members, and I humbly request all the faculties of the college to inform students regarding our upcoming events. I extend my sincere thanks to all the faculties. Next is our core people, the students community who participated in the program. I extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to all the students who participated in the program. And also, I request to inform your friends. And we have got more and more, webinar programs. So I request all the students community to inform your friends and let them enlighten by the webinar program of our KPGA. Next, I would like to thank all the members and all the participants in today's program. I wholeheartedly welcome all the participants, and let me conclude my words. Thank you very much.
Now, now the meeting comes to a close, and let us stand up for the national anthem. Is there a national anthem, Sonu?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Everyone stand up, please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, everyone. Once again, meeting is dispersed.
Good night to all. Good night to all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice performance from all the executive members and others. Okay. Nice.
Thank you, sir.